was noised about that there was a golden Bible found. That was what it was called at the time. People became excited. My father assisted in concealing the plates. Feelings rose to such a pitch that a mob collected to search the house. Mary Noble.
Through the Smiths' ingenuity, the mob dispersed. Joseph hid the plates in various places, moving them when prompted. One night, a mob tore up the floor of the Cooper shop looking for him. They failed to notice the plates hidden safely overhead.
The persecution became so intolerable that I was under necessity of leaving Manchester. In the midst of our afflictions, we found a friend in Martin Harris. I went to the city of New York and presented the characters which had been translated with the translation thereof to Professor Anthon. He gave me a certificate attesting that they were true characters and the translation was correct. When Mr. Anthon asked me how the plates were found, I answered that an angel of God had revealed it. He then said, "Let me see that certificate." He took it and tore it to pieces, saying that there were no such things as angels, and if I would bring the plates to him, he would translate them. I informed him that the plates were sealed, and that I was forbidden to bring them. He replied, "I cannot read a sealed book." Martin Harris.
Meanwhile, Joseph and Emma settled into a small home in Harmony. She was expecting their first child. Martin came to Harmony in March 1828. His wife Lucy came with him, determined to prevent her husband from being cheated.
I want to see it for myself.
During their visit, Lucy made every effort to find the plates. When Joseph refused to show them to her, she left in a huff. Martin was back in Harmony by mid-April, and the work of translation began in earnest. In 3 months, 116 pages of manuscript were completed. Martin's request to see the plates as further evidence of their existence was denied. He pleaded with Joseph to at least allow him to take the manuscript home to reassure his wife. Joseph asked the Lord and was answered no. But Martin insisted, and Joseph asked again. Finally, the third time, permission was given. A day after Martin left with the manuscript, Emma gave birth to a son. They named him Alvin. He lived only a few hours. Joseph cared for Emma night and day for the next 2 weeks. When she finally regained her strength, his thoughts returned to the manuscript. He was so concerned that Emma urged him to go to Manchester and inquire after Martin. When Joseph learned that Martin had lost the manuscript, he was beside himself with grief.
I well remember that day of darkness. No one could comfort Joseph. The heavens seemed clothed in blackness and the earth shrouded in gloom. Lucy Mack Smith.
He was so shaken in the sense that he had betrayed somehow the counsel given him that he seriously wondered if it was all over as far as his being an instrument to continue. He would later say, with this in mind, I have made this my rule. When God commands, do it.
After the plates were returned, Emma served as a scribe for Joseph for a time.
Joseph could neither write nor dictate a well-worded letter, let alone dictating a book. My belief is that the Book of Mormon is of divine authenticity. For, when acting as his scribe, Joseph would dictate to me hour after hour, and when returning after meals or other interruptions, would at once begin where he had left off, without either seeing the manuscript or having any portion of it read to him. It would have been improbable that a learned man could do this. For one so unlearned as he was, it was simply impossible. Emma Hale Smith.
Emma's time was limited by the responsibilities of running a household, and so the work of translation went forward slowly. But the Lord soon sent another scribe in the person of Oliver Cowdery.
These were days never to be forgotten. To sit under the sound of a voice dictated by the inspiration of heaven awakened the utmost gratitude of this bosom. Day after day I continued uninterrupted to write from his mouth as he translated the Book of Mormon. Oliver Cowdery.
One day, while translating the record, a passage regarding baptism raised a question about how the ordinance was to be done.
We went into the woods to inquire of the Lord. While we were praying, a messenger descended in a cloud of light.
Upon you, my fellow servants, in the name of Messiah, I confer the priesthood of Aaron, which holds the keys of the ministering of angels, and of the gospel of repentance, and of baptism by immersion, for the remission of sins.
He commanded us to be baptized.
Later, Peter, James, and John conferred the Melchizedek priesthood.
In the meantime, we were forced to keep secret the circumstances of having received the priesthood and being baptized, for a spirit of persecution had manifested itself.
Opposition became so great that Oliver suggested they remove themselves to the home of friends in Fayette. Joseph continued the work of translation at the Peter Whitmer farm.
One morning, when Joseph was getting ready to continue the translation, something went wrong about the house, and he was put out about it, something that Emma had done. Oliver and I went upstairs, and Joseph came up soon after, but he could not translate a single syllable. He went downstairs, out into the orchard, and made supplication to the Lord. He was gone about an hour. Came back to the house and asked Emma's forgiveness, and then the translation went on all right.
In the name of
He could do nothing save he was humble and faithful. David Whitmer.
The translation was completed in June 1829. It was nothing short of a miracle. With little formal education, Joseph dictated the translation in a little over 2 months of actual working time.
It's very easy for Latter-day Saints, when they consider translation, to think it was simple. Joseph had the Urim and Thummim and the plates. God simply gave him the words. We know that isn't true, because Oliver Cowdery tried to translate and failed. He couldn't. It required a kind of concentration, a kind of moral purity and strength, and the capacity to hear God's voice that Oliver couldn't muster.
Arrangements were made with E.B. Grandin of Palmyra to print the book. Martin Harris mortgaged part of his farm to ensure payment of the $3,000 required to print 5,000 copies. Meanwhile, the Lord revealed that others would be permitted to see the plates.
We have seen with our eyes and handled with our hands. We saw the engravings and know with a surety. We give our names to witness that which we have seen. Martin Harris.
The first copies of the Book of Mormon were made available to the public on March 26, 1830. When Mary Elizabeth Leitner heard that Isaac Morley had a copy of the Book of Mormon in his possession, she went to see it for herself.
As I looked at it, I felt such a desire to read it that I could not refrain from asking him to let me borrow it. If any person in this world was ever perfectly happy,